I'm in this for a long term, and that's why I strongly believe each Bitcoin has a potential to touch over 100,000.
Today, I'm joined by Naeem Aslam, the Chief Market Analyst for ThinkMarkets. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. So jumping into things, until recently, it looked as though momentum of the bull run had almost run dry. Everyone was expecting BTC to drop to around 8K. How do you feel about this renewed drive recently? Will it last? Do you think there'll be another pullback?
I do not agree with the stance that you just mentioned, because the reason is that yes, on a daily time frame, the price had few battles with the 50-day moving average, and I'm a person who believes in data, who believes in the price action, and I do look at fundamentals very closely, and then because those fundamentals do drive the price, there's always a question that, okay, technicals are more important, or do fundamentals are really important? Because given that there are no actual fundamentals when it comes to Bitcoin price, because there are no earnings, there's nothing at all, just like we have for the normal stocks. But I think that the fundamentals are embedded. It's the devil in the detail. That's what we really look for. What the SEC, what the regulators, and what other major enterprises are saying about the blockchain technology, and then how they can really integrate their solutions with their crypto king, i.e. Bitcoin, right? So that's what I really look for in the headlines. And that really formed the bed for me in terms of fundamentals. But whenever there is an adverse news on the market, then I'm looking at, okay, how far the price is going to move. And there is nothing better than moving averages, because it is all about simplicity. And then all of the traders, what they look for, okay, where the price is falling in relation to these moving averages, and how far are we with those moving averages. You just have to factor in the standard deviation difference between the price and, of course, the moving averages. So giving you a shorter answer to your question, I certainly do not believe that the trend is going to be to the downside. I think if anyone is focused on that, then they may be surprised. Unless and of course, if the price drops below 50-day moving average, then yes, all bets would be off under those circumstances. But keep a close eye. So far, bulls have been winning this battle. And in my recent article, I've already mentioned that if not weeks, I think just within a month or so, it is highly likely the Bitcoin price is going to touch or is going to make another 2009 high.
Wow. Okay. So reach back to 14,000 around there.
Yeah. I mean, yesterday we touched 12,000. Today we have just touched 12,000 as we speak.
Oh, really?
So it's only 2,000 away from 14,000. And you and I, we both know that Bitcoin is kind of a beast that can do that milestone in less than an hour.
Okay, and you speak about moving averages, and I guess you place a lot of weight on that. But people are thinking that this run is possibly catalyzed by the China-US trade war,
Yes.
and that's having a negative impact on stocks. But do you think that Bitcoin is actually being used as a safe haven, and that's why we're seeing a run up in price?
Look, there is a lot of academic research done between the correlation of Bitcoin between safe haven and the risk on assets, right? And Bitcoin has been put in that basket. So in the past, we have seen the correlation, but the correlation hasn't been that strong. But if you look at the correlation of gold with Bitcoin and against the S&P 500 index, you can clearly see that they are very much in tandem. So both gold and Bitcoin, they are moving in the same direction. And what does it tell you? It tells you that yes, investors are certainly seeking a place where they can feel a little bit more comfortable, because this trade war, it's a disaster. It's absolutely disaster. And no one wants to see this currency war coming up, because that is going to have nuclear impact on the market, because we have already, S&P is off how much, by nearly over 6% from its all-time high. And among the top four indices in in Europe, FTSE is the weakest index, and DAX, we have the German industrial data out of today. The best case scenario when it comes to Germany, and we all know Germany is the economic engine of the Eurozone, the best case scenario that we're looking at for Germany is perhaps some sort of a consolidation when it comes to the economic growth, right? Or perhaps a slow, very, very sluggish growth. And that is the best case scenario. And then the other scenarios are that the country is highly likely to be perhaps posting a reading which could be in the recession, which could be in recession territory in the coming quarter. So the moment that we start using the word recession, it really elevates the future perspectives of Bitcoin and other crypto assets. So one of the articles that I did on Forbes, I think back in July, at the time gold was trading in early 1400s, and we talked about that, okay, look, there are possibilities of the upside move to be over 8%. And that really means that the price is going to shift well above the 1500. And now we've made 1499.28. So only a few basis points away from touching that level of 1500, which is nothing but just a psychological level.
Amazing. And we, speaking of a recession, we've had the Federal Reserve cut interest rates, which typically only usually happens within a recession. Do you think we're close to an economic collapse of some kind?
It's coming, because historically speaking, this has been the longest bull run. A lot of that was just artificially pumped because of the loose monetary policy. And sadly, the ammunition doesn't work anymore. Again, pick up any data, whatever you feel, or whatever country that you wanted to back up your argument. What you will see is pretty much the same evidence that, okay, the loose monetary policy or the dovish monetary stance hasn't really worked. Printing money hasn't worked. Even now, looking at the conditions of the biggest economy, Germany, you can see that German bank still isn't willing to put any money, just putting more pressure on the ECB. Well, you guys go and do whatever you want to do, but Germans aren't really willing to do anything with their own fiscal policy. They're just like stuck on it. They say, we're going to maintain this, and then that's what it is. If ECB wants to fine us, sure, let them fine it. But if you look at Japan, if you look at China, again, talking about China, the reliability of the economic data, there's a huge question mark on that. Whether that GDP growth which comes out, if that is an actual number, or whether that's just a fabricated number. And over in the US, again, the economic numbers aren't that appealing at all. Look at the US ISM manufacturing data, or the non-manufacturing data came out yesterday. What does that tell you? It tells you that, okay, the Fed's current monetary policy stance, 25 basis point rate cut isn't enough. So expect another 25 basis points from the Fed. Last night, Royal Bank of New Zealand surprised the market. I mean, that is a normal fiat currency, dropped over 2%. Moves like that, it doesn't happen in the currency market that often, but it is happening because monetary policy isn't working. The investors have just completely lost their confidence when it comes to the monetary policy. The bank cut the interest rate by 50 basis points. They were only supposed to do by a quarter of a point, by 25 basis points. And now, because Royal Bank of New Zealand has done that, the entire momentum has shifted towards RBA, Royal Bank of Australia, which will also be coming up with its monetary policy decision in a day or two. And now everyone is expecting, okay, perhaps we're going to see another 50 basis point cut from RBA. So this interest rate cut from one country to another country to another country, that is the momentum that we are seeing. Great. Negative yielding, the size of the negative yielding debt is sitting well over 15 trillion US dollar. I published this report on our website on ThinkMarkets. Have a look at that chart. Very interesting chart. That the size is just amazing. And if that size of the negative yielding debt continue to ride this way, it's really good for Bitcoin.
And that's it. And you said actually that in the next bull run we could go to 60,000 to 100,000 and range between there. How soon could you reasonably expect this? Is this something that, and what would Bitcoin need to be catalyzed to those levels? Would it be an economic disaster?
There you go. Just the headlines popping up. Pakistan will suspend bilateral trade with India. So geopolitical uncertainty is just on the rise. Two major economies over in Far East Asia. So to answer your question, we have enormous amount of geopolitical uncertainty within the Middle East. Now that uncertainty is also elevating over in Asia. Look at what is happening in Hong Kong and who has created that trouble. And again, who's trying to defend that? We're talking about China. Now with this latest headline, India and Pakistan, rather than just moving swiftly, especially what Pakistan has done recently with India by returning their army officer, they shouldn't be taking this kind of move, because both countries need to develop growth. Both countries need to work together and resolve this. But and then another mediator, especially like a Donald Trump, isn't really going to help. But yeah, that's what they're relying on. To answer your question in a very short answer, I think it won't be too long. Obviously, I don't have that magic ball to tell you when exactly that will happen, but I think the signs are there. Bull market has absolutely run out of steam. The more sell-off we see in the equity market, the higher Bitcoin price is going to move. And of course, Bitcoin isn't the only asset for investment. Always look for other assets, such as maybe look at gold, look at silver, look at volatility indices. I mean, volatility index was up yesterday for European stocks 35% on the day. I mean, that's another form of Bitcoin or crypto volatility. They always talk about volatility. That is a volatility. And the same was for VIX, for the S&P 500, for the US stocks. And right now, what I'm looking at, that volatility for the European stocks is up again, another whooping 10% so far. And US futures are dropping like a rock. It's already down by 400 points.
And we haven't seen much mainstream media interest. They've been waiting on the sidelines.
I think I'll disagree with that. I think mainstream media has been giving a fair amount of attention to this.
Do you think the crypto market, though, in particular?
Yes, to Bitcoin, yes, because if you listen to Bloomberg yesterday, Larry Summer, the man who's known for his ex job, he was on a TV, and guess what he said? He used Bitcoin as a safe haven asset. He classified it in the same basket. And every day I got a Bloomberg just there all day long. We hear people coming, they're asking about it. In fact, Francine Lacroix from Bloomberg News today, she asked a question to the head of not traditional cross-asset investment from JP Morgan, the same question, that do you think Bitcoin is a safe haven asset? And he said, well, I think we do see a correlation that where whenever the equity market falls and the price tends to rise. So of course, I think the mainstream media has woken up. And then remember, I think it was a conference over in Asia when a similar question came up. And as you know, I do write for Forbes, and then the allegation was that, okay, mainstream media isn't really giving enough coverage to digital assets, so-called Bitcoin. And my answer to that was that, why do you think Bitcoin touched the price of 20,000? Do you think it was just a normal tier 2, tier 4 media, whatever you wanted to call them? Or was it the mainstream media? Because of that, everyone got entrusted so much, everyone got to know.
I suppose that's what my question is leading to, really, is the idea that we have had the slow and steady rise this year to 14,000, but we haven't had the crazy ride we had around Christmas 2017, and that was driven mainly by the media. Do you think that an increased presence of media, as we're seeing it, will drive price higher?
Yes, it will. And at the same time, I think we also need some more friendly regulation. Recently, I've done an article again on the FCA's new regulation, which came out. And the headline was pretty much that, okay, they didn't ban it, they talked about it, but it isn't still banned. And then, without naming the name, they were saying, okay, we never regulated it. How can we ban it? Okay, because you cannot regulate something which is decentralized, you can't regulate, but you do have something called sandbox, where you are looking at large number of digital assets to see how you are going to regulate it. So you are moving in that direction.
Yeah. And that's I was going to ask you a similar thing to do with regulation, I guess, but that might be too leading. But do you think there could be anything that could act as a barrier for Bitcoin?
Not in my, I think here is something, you can put sanctions on countries and how that is going to affect the price, right? Which is again the part of the regulation. Imagine if these governments, they start mining Bitcoin by using their own electric power. The cost to them to use the electric power isn't the same as for you and me. They can just easily fuel this mining station and then start mining Bitcoin themselves. They don't have to worry about anything.
It's very true. Yeah. So in terms, you're saying that they could monopolize Bitcoin. Is that something that we could?
Yeah, they can provide more support to Bitcoin by doing that.
Right. So, but you don't think that would become more? It would become more centralized as a result.
No, not necessarily, but yes, the elements could be there. Yes.
So let's talk about altcoins a bit, because they seem to get left behind these days a little bit. They say that the alt season has kind of died off, the idea of one. Do you think we'll see a resurgence for altcoins, an alt season of some kind?
For digital assets,
yeah,
yes.
for Ethereum, yeah,
yes. For Ethereum, Ethereum is an enterprise story.
Okay, right.
And as long as consensus is supporting it, I think Ethereum still has legs. And even till this day, when we are talking about digital assets, about tokenization of assets, a large number of them are still using Ethereum, despite the fact that we have scalability issues, we have so many various different concerns, but they're still very much looking at Ethereum. Or then they will use Hyperledger, Coda, or whatever you wanted to use them if they wanted to keep it on a permission blockchain. But I think Ethereum it's an enterprise solution as long as consensus is there. And for disclosure purposes, I do hold a large number of Ethereum. I'm not going to sell them because for me, whenever I buy anything, my risk to reward ratio is I already factor that in, and then I'm happy to lose whatever the amount I am ready to lose. So for me, the intraday price movement doesn't really matter because I'm in this for a long term, and that's why I strongly believe each Bitcoin has a potential to touch over 100,000.
Mm-hmm. Right. Wow. And any alts other than Ethereum that particularly catch your eye in terms of longevity or sustainability?
I think projects, yes. Global Tree project, which is the tokenization of trees. So basically, one security token is backed by one tree. And look, what they have done is basically, if you wanted to buy timber, it's not possible unless you just go to the market and then buy it through that. But you can't really buy one tree or anything like that. So what they are trying to do is they're trying to become more environmental friendly, and then plus they are giving you access to a market which wasn't really available in a traditional manner. Now you can go and create a liquidity out of non-fungible asset. So I'm very, very interested to know more about these projects which are trying to create liquidity out of fungible or non-fungible assets. And I think that's where the value is. A large number of projects are trying to tokenize real estate, and we all know that for sure. But again, the liquidity strap is there because of the lockout period, so-called accredited investors, and so on and so forth. And these challenges will only be overcome once we have more friendly regulatory platform or guidance from these regulators whenever they are ready, and it's not too far.
Mm-hmm. And finally, we're in a bull market right now. How long do you think this one will last? It's hard to estimate, but
so we are not in a bull market yet. I think crypto winter is over. So the bull run hasn't started. Bull run will only start when the price will cross above 20,000. So for me, that is the start of the bull run. Right now, it's just a crypto winter that we have just it's over, and now the price is nicely and slowly trying to move to the upside. And I think a gradual move like that will really, really like that, rather than those explosive moves, because anything which goes up that fast, it comes down that fast as well. So from an investment perspective, that is not really a great idea.
All right. Well, thank you, Naeem Aslam. Thank you for joining us. Brilliant.
All right. Thank you, bye. Thank you. Cheers.